My name is Claire Harmon. I am 31 years old, and my brother dissolved our relationship with a single text message at 9:47 on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in a client meeting when my phone buzzed under the conference table. I glanced down out of habit and read the message twice before I understood what I was looking at. "You're out. Dad and I already talked. Don't make this harder than it has to be." No call, no warning, no conversation that could have led a reasonable person to that sentence. Just 11 words and a period at the end, like a door closing on a room I had spent 9 years building. I finished the meeting. I answered every question, reviewed every line item, shook every hand. Then I walked to my car, sat in the parking garage for 4 minutes, and made 3 phone calls that my brother would spend the next 6 months trying to undo. The family LLC I had structured after my father's back surgery was locked before I pulled out of the garage. The credit line I had personally guaranteed for the business account was flagged for immediate review. The auto transfer I had set up to cover my parents' mortgage shortfall every month was canceled before I reached the highway. By the time I got home, my phone had 31 missed calls. By morning, there were 52. My brother had sent my father into a full panic, my mother into tears, and their accountant into an emergency email chain, and I had already changed the password on every account only I had ever actually managed. Before I tell you what happened when we were all finally in the same room together, let me ask you something. Has anyone in your family ever decided you were the problem right at the moment you became impossible to replace? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how many of us there are. Because what happened to me did not begin with that text. It began 3 years earlier, when my father was recovering from surgery, and my brother was between jobs for the 4th time, and someone had to hold everything together. That someone was always me. I work as a project finance coordinator for a commercial construction company. My job is numbers, contracts, compliance schedules, vendor payment structures, and the very specific skill of making sure money goes where it is supposed to go and nowhere else. I am good at it. I am good at it in the way that people who grew up watching their parents make quiet, avoidable financial mistakes tend to be good at it. Careful, thorough, allergic to assumptions. When my father hurt his back and could not run his small landscaping operation the way he used to, I came in and restructured everything. I set up a proper LLC so the business had liability separation. I co-signed on a refinanced mortgage, so my parents could lower their monthly payment, while my father was on reduced income. I created a shared business account with clear transfer protocols. I handled vendor contracts, insurance renewals, equipment financing. My brother, who had recently moved back home after a failed attempt at opening a food truck with someone else's money, was supposed to take over operations on the ground while I managed the financial side. That was the arrangement. My father shook my hand and said he did not know what he would do without me. My brother said nothing. I told myself that was fine. I told myself he was adjusting. I told myself that some people show gratitude quietly or later. I spent 3 years telling myself things that were not true because the alternative required a confrontation I did not have time for. What I did not see clearly enough was the pattern forming underneath the surface of every family dinner and holiday and casual phone call about business. My brother was not adjusting. He was watching. He was learning the vocabulary of what I had built without learning any of the work behind it. He learned the name of the LLC. He learned which bank held the business account. He learned which vendors I had relationships with and which ones were on auto renewal. He filed none of this away for the purpose of helping. He filed it away for the purpose of eventually not needing me. The text was not a sudden decision. I know that now. It was the last step in a plan that had already taken shape before I received it. What made my stomach drop was not the message itself, but what I found out about the timeline afterward. Everything I know about the 3 months before that Tuesday morning I learned in pieces. The way you always learn the worst things, too late and out of order. My brother had told my father I was skimming. That was the word he used. Not stealing, not embezzling. Skimming, which sounds almost casual, almost like something a person could do without even meaning to. He told my father that the account transfers I ran every month were slightly inflated, that I was pulling a small percentage above what was documented, that it had been going on for years and added up to something significant. He had a spreadsheet, printed. Highlighted. The numbers on it were wrong in ways that would have been immediately obvious to anyone who checked them against the actual bank statements, but my father did not check. My father trusted the spreadsheet because my brother had put it in front of him with a serious face and a voice full of reluctant concern, and because it is deeply human to believe the worst about someone when the person telling you the worst looks like they are protecting you. My brother told my father he had been sitting on this information for months because he did not want to hurt the family. He said he only came forward because he had to. He said he was sorry. My father believed him. That was the wound that took the longest to close, not the accusation, not the text. The fact that my father looked at a spreadsheet full of invented numbers and decided his daughter had been stealing from him without asking her a single question first. I did not find out about the spreadsheet until 5 days after the text, when my mother called me crying and let something slip that she immediately tried to pull back. She said something about figures not matching, and when I asked her what figures she meant, she went quiet in the specific way people go quiet when they have already said too much. I told her I needed to know everything. She said she did not want to be in the middle. I told her she was already in the middle. She told me about the spreadsheet. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and printed 4 years of business account statements. Every transfer, every vendor payment, every insurance premium, every reimbursement, every single line item with the date, the amount, and the corresponding invoice or contract attached. I put them in a binder. I labeled every tab. Then I called Martin Kowalski. Martin had been the LLC's accountant for the first 2 years before my brother suggested switching to someone newer and cheaper and, as it turned out, someone who had never actually reviewed the original account structure with any real scrutiny. Martin was semi-retired and meticulous, and he owed me nothing, which was exactly why I trusted him. He agreed to look at everything. He called me back 2 days later and said there was no discrepancy. Not a rounding error. Not an administrative overlap. Nothing. The transfers were clean. The documentation was complete. The numbers matched down to the decimal point. He said it in a quiet, deliberate way, and then he added something that made me set my phone down on the counter because I needed both hands free to process it. He said he had received a call 3 weeks before my brother sent me that text. Someone had asked him, carefully and indirectly, whether there was any scenario under which the LLC could be restructured to reduce the number of co-signers. They had asked specifically about the liability implications of having a co-signer who was, and these were the words Martin quoted back to me, increasingly unreliable and difficult to work with. Unreliable. Difficult. Not incompetent. Not absent. Those are words chosen by someone building a narrative, not reporting a fact. I asked Martin who had called. He said he had assumed it was my father following up on some internal conversation. The number had been blocked. I thanked him and wrote down the date he had received that call. Then I opened my calendar and looked at what had happened 3 weeks before that. My brother had asked me, at a family dinner, whether I thought the LLC needed a formal operations manager now that the business was growing. I had said not yet. He had smiled and said he was just thinking about the future. I had thought nothing of it. The call to Martin was placed 4 days later. I know exactly what he was doing. He was quietly checking whether the infrastructure could survive without me before he made his move. He wanted to know if the doors would still open after he changed the locks. They would not. That was what he had underestimated. Not my willingness to fight. My leverage. The proof I needed arrived the way the best proof always arrives. Accidentally. I had sent an email to the LLC's insurance broker asking about renewal terms under a structure change. She replied promptly. And in her reply, she accidentally included a prior thread that had been forwarded to her by someone else. My brother had emailed her 2 weeks before the text, explaining that there had been some internal concerns about the current account manager's reliability and asking what documentation would be needed to remove a cosigner and update the authorized contact list. He had described me as someone who had been showing signs of financial irregularities and personal instability that the family was actively trying to address. Financial irregularities, personal instability. I read those words 3 times. I read them with the same focused stillness I use when I find an error in a contract that someone is hoping I will miss. Then I forwarded the thread to my attorney. Then I forwarded it to Martin. Then I replied to the broker with one sentence. Please do not make any changes to this account until you hear directly from me. And please preserve all correspondence related to this matter. She replied in 6 minutes. My attorney called in 15. The day before I agreed to come back to the house, my father sent me a voicemail. He sounded smaller than I had ever heard him. He said he was not sure what he had been told anymore. He said he just wanted to understand what had actually happened. He said my name the way he used to say it when I was a kid, and he was not angry, just trying to find me. I listened to it twice in my car outside the grocery store. Then I texted back, Tuesday, at 6. Everyone home. I will bring documents. Please make sure my brother is there. My brother tried to cancel twice before Tuesday. The first time he told my mother he had a work commitment. The second time he said he did not think a formal meeting was necessary and that everyone was overreacting. My father told him to be there. He was. When I walked into my parents' living room that Tuesday evening, the energy was what I had expected. My father sat in his usual chair, looking like a man who had not slept in 10 days. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway holding a dish towel she had already folded and unfolded 4 times. My brother sat on the couch with his arms crossed, wearing the expression he always wore when he had already decided he was the victim and was waiting for everyone else to catch up. I did not say hello. I sat down, opened the folder I had brought, and placed the first document on the coffee table. 4 years of business account statements. Clean, organized, tabbed by quarter. I placed the second document next to it. Martin Kowalski's written summary, confirming 0 discrepancies across the entire account history. I placed the third. The original LLC formation documents showing the cosigner structure, the transfer authorization protocol, and the notarized signature of every party who had agreed to the terms. I placed the fourth. The insurance broker email thread. The one where my brother described me as financially irregular and personally unstable while asking how to remove me from an account I had built. Nobody spoke for a long moment. My brother looked at the email thread, then looked at the window. My mother made a sound that was not quite a word. My father leaned forward and picked up the email and read it slowly. My brother said the broker had taken things out of context. I asked him what the correct context was for the phrase financial irregularities. He said he had been trying to protect the business in case things got worse. I asked him what things. He looked at my mother. My father put the email down and asked him directly, "Did you tell me your sister was taking money from the account?" My brother said he had concerns. My father asked again, "Did you show me a spreadsheet and tell me it proved she had been skimming?" My brother said the numbers had seemed off to him at the time. My father turned to me. I slid Martin's written summary across the table. I said, Martin Kowalski reviewed 4 years of records and found no discrepancy. Not a rounding error. Nothing. He had those same numbers your son showed you. I gave him a moment to read it. Then I said the thing I had been waiting to say since I sat in that parking garage and made 3 phone calls in 12 minutes. I said, he did not bring you a spreadsheet because he found something wrong. He brought it to you because he needed you to believe something was wrong before he moved. Because if you believed I was the problem, you would give him permission to remove me. And if he removed me first, I could not lock the accounts before he had access to everything I built. My father looked at my brother for a long time. My brother started talking immediately, the way people do when silence has already convicted them. He said I had always made everyone feel like the business was mine, and not the family's. He said I had been controlling and difficult, and that nobody ever felt like they could ask me questions without being made to feel stupid. He said maybe none of this would have happened if I had just trusted people more. My mother turned to look at him when he said that, not at me, at him. It was the first moment I saw her understand the difference between what she had been told and what had actually happened. I waited until he finished. Then I asked one question. I asked, when exactly did I tell you I wanted to cut Mom and Dad out of the business? He blinked. He said that was not what he had meant. I asked, then show me one email, one text, one voicemail, one conversation. Anyone can verify where I said I wanted control of everything. He looked at the floor. I said, you cannot. Because it did not happen. What happened is that I built something that worked, and you spent 3 years watching it work, and then you decided it would be easier to inherit it than earn access to it. So you told our father a story designed to make him afraid of me, and you told an insurance broker a story designed to make her willing to help you remove me, and you called our accountant and asked whether the structure could survive without me. And the answer to that last question is the one that actually matters. It cannot. My father stood up from his chair. He asked my brother to leave. My brother said he was not going anywhere, that he lived there, that this was his family too. My father said that was fine, and then he picked up his phone and called my brother's girlfriend and said that her presence was needed and that the conversation was going to continue whether my brother participated in it or not. She arrived 20 minutes later, and the look on her face when she walked in and saw the insurance email on the table told me everything I needed to know about how much of this plan she had been part of. She sat down next to my brother and took his hand and said this had all been a misunderstanding. I turned to her and said, "I have your boyfriend's email to the insurance broker. I have the date of the call made to our accountant. I have the printed spreadsheet my father was given with numbers that do not match 4 years of verified statements." I said, "If you want to call that a misunderstanding, I need you to explain which part was misunderstood." She did not answer. My brother put his face in his hands. My mother started to cry. Not the tight, controlled kind. The other kind. The kind that means a person has finally run out of the energy it takes to not cry. My father looked at me with the expression I had not seen from him in years, the one that meant he was not performing patience or authority, just standing there as himself, looking at his daughter and understanding something that could not be taken back. He said, "I looked at a piece of paper and did not call you. I did not call you." He said it twice. I think the second time was for himself. I did not tell him it was okay. Because it was not okay, and saying so would have been a kindness to him and a lie to myself, and I had spent enough years in this family choosing his comfort over my own accuracy. I said, "I know." He nodded like that landed exactly where it was supposed to. The terms I set were not punitive. They were permanent. That was the difference. I did not want my brother punished in a way that could later be softened or reversed when feelings settled and family pressure rebuilt. I wanted a structure that held whether everyone was in a good mood or not. The LLC would be reorganized under a revised operating agreement. My name would remain as sole financial authority. My parents would retain full operational benefit, including income disbursements, equipment access, and business credit protections under my guarantee. My brother would be removed from every authorized role, contact list, signature authority, and advisory function, with no pathway to reinstatement that did not require my written approval. Any future attempt to contact vendors, the bank, or any insurance or financial institution on behalf of the LLC without my authorization would be treated as a breach of the operating agreement with legal consequences already specified in the document. My father signed the same evening. My mother asked twice whether the language needed to be so final. I gave her the same answer both times. The language needed to match what actually happened, not what we wished had happened. She signed. My attorney filed the revised operating agreement 3 days later. The insurance broker was formally notified of the updated contact structure. The bank received new signature cards. Martin agreed to resume as the LLC's accountant, which I should have insisted on maintaining from the beginning. My brother found out through the broker, who emailed him a notice of the updated authorized contact list with my name at the top and his name absent. He called me 11 times that afternoon. I did not answer. The text came next. He said I had poisoned our parents against him. He said I had used money as a weapon. He said the family would never be the same because of what I had done. I saved every message and forwarded them to my attorney. Not because I expected to need them immediately. Because I had learned the expensive way that documentation is not something you gather when things go wrong. It is something you maintain so that when things go wrong, you are already prepared. My brother's girlfriend left 2 weeks later. A family friend told me she had found out this was not the first time he had tried to position himself inside someone else's financial structure by discrediting the person who built it. His previous relationship had ended for reasons that now sounded familiar. Relatives who had received his version of events stopped asking me to explain myself once the timeline stopped supporting his story. There is a particular silence that falls over people when they realize the narrative they repeated was not their own conclusion. I watched it happen over several weeks in small ways. An unanswered group text, a family gathering where certain people stood slightly closer to me than before, a phone call from an aunt who said she had been confused and was glad things were clearer now. My brother moved into an apartment across town. My mother mentioned it once in a way that invited sympathy. I did not perform it. He had a roof, an income, and the exact amount of family support he had been trying to help himself to without earning it. None. 3 months after that Tuesday meeting, I drove out to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon for no particular reason. My father was in the garage reorganizing his tool wall, which he did whenever he was processing something. I sat on a folding chair and watched him work for a few minutes, without either of us saying anything. He handed me a level he needed me to hold against a shelf bracket while he marked the wall. We did this for maybe 20 minutes, just the two of us and a task that required steadiness and quiet. Then he said, without turning around, "I want you to know I read every page of those account statements after you left that night. Every page." I said, "I know." He said there was nothing wrong. I said, "I know." He said he should have called you before he ever looked at that spreadsheet. I said, "Yes." He kept marking the wall. Then he said, "I am sorry. Not the kind of sorry that asks you to make it easier for them. The kind that just sits there and waits." I said I heard him. I meant it. My mother's apology came the following week over the phone. She said she had known something felt wrong for months, but had convinced herself that keeping the peace meant staying quiet. She said she had not understood that staying quiet while one of her children was being set up was not neutrality. It was a choice. I told her I appreciated that she finally said it. She asked if I was still angry. I told her the honest answer, which is that I was not angry the way I used to be. Anger requires a belief that things could have gone differently with just a little more care. What I had now was something more durable. An understanding, a structure, terms. I support my parents. I manage their business finances. I see them regularly, and I am glad to do all of it. I also do not operate on trust alone anymore, which is not bitterness, and I want to be clear about that distinction. Bitterness is wanting people to suffer for what they cost you. This is something different. This is having paid for clarity and keeping the receipt. The week the revised LLC documents were fully executed and the accounts were back under my sole management, I drove home from my attorney's office on a clear evening and sat in my parking lot for a few minutes with the radio off. I was not celebrating. I was not devastated. I was somewhere in the middle of those two things, which is where you end up when you win something that should never have required a fight. My brother had sent that text because he believed that the moment he named me as the problem, I would fold the way I had always folded before. That I would call, apologize for some unnamed offense, and slowly trade my way back into a room I had never done anything wrong in. He had read 9 years of my patience as permanence. He had confused my stability with my inability to leave. That was the miscalculation that cost him everything. I did not go back as the daughter who absorbed the damage and kept the lights on for people who had decided the lights came on by themselves. I went back as the person who owned the switch. And if you have ever been the one in your family who keeps everything running while everyone else argues about who deserves credit for the warmth, I want you to hear this. Your patience is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you are competent. But competence is not the same as obligation. The moment someone in your family decides you are infrastructure, you are allowed to show them exactly how cold the building gets when the system goes offline. My brother told me I was out. By morning, there were 52 missed calls and a revised operating agreement that made sure the only person who would ever be out again would be the one who tried to make me leave.